Right, an unscheduled diversion, chapter 30, part 2. Going outside a rocket in space is called EVA, Extra Vehicular Activity. Unfortunately, I'd missed the part of the training where we did that because of Eddie Xanadu's electric Ribena. The others remembered the important things: how to put the helmet on, how to connect your oxygen, how to check the EVA suit. There was a section in the manual about how to open the airlock. And suddenly there I was, ready to go into space. I was standing inside the airlock and Flora was pointing to a coiled yellow rope. "That's the safety harness," she said. "It ties you to the rocket so you don't just drift off. Put it on straight away, you're dead without that." I fastened myself into the safety harness. Florida sealed the inside door behind me. For a minute I was bobbing by myself inside the airlock. It was like standing in a lift. It seemed so ordinary, apart from the fact that I was levitating, that I started to think that maybe Samson 2 was right. Maybe we weren't in space. Maybe we were in some kind of simulation. Then the external door started to open. There was just a slant of black at first, black so solid that it looked like a wall. It was hard to believe that things could move around in it. Then I started to see the underside of one of the Dandelion's silver sails. I'm saying now that's what it was, but it was hard to tell. It was so dazzling that you couldn't really make out the shape. It blazed like the filament of a really strong light bulb. Then the door opened wider, and I was out there in the black nothingness, floating free. Suddenly, I collided with one of the sails and rolled around under it until I hit one of the struts and something made me grab hold of it. I hung there like a kind of mad Christmas decoration, and for a second or two it was completely the most cosmic thing ever. The huge moon was in front of me, and my feet seemed to be dangling in a kind of milky bath of stars. In a moment I was going to turn myself round and see if I could see the earth. Meanwhile, I was enjoying how intense it all was. The space between the stars was blacker than anything I'd ever seen. Everything that was shining, the sail, the moon, the stars, my metal cuffs, was shining 1,000,000 times brighter than you've ever seen anything shine. Even my yellow safety cord seemed to shine. I remember hanging there, watching it slither through my legs and snake off into space. I remember thinking, hey, I've got a safety cord. I can let go. And at the same moment thinking, if one end of it is fastened to me, what's the other end fastened to? Nothing. It was just drifting off into space. I'd fastened myself to the cord, but I'd not fastened the cord to the module. All I can remember after that is my own hands gripping the struts, trying to hold on, my own hands shuffling painfully slowly along the sail towards the module. I thought about going hand over hand like on monkey bars, but I was too terrified to let go with one hand for even a second. It seemed to take hours to get back to the side of the rocket. I was sweating and my heart was thumping. By the time I was next to the rocket, my helmet was starting to steam up. That's when I realised I wasn't really sure which way it was back to the hatch. I'd rolled over so many times under the sail, I couldn't remember now whether I came out of the back or the front. I worked out that if the yellow cord was streaming past me, then it must be pointing in the opposite direction to the one I came from. Also, I knew I couldn't see the moon from the hatch, so the hatch must be at the end furthest from the moon. Underneath the sail there was a strut attaching it to the module. I edged down that and found the sill of the compartment the sails had been in before they popped out. I gripped that and followed it towards the back. It took ages. By the time I got to the end, I was too tired to do anything except hang there, staring straight at a couple of rivets and a big metal panel. I knew the hatch must be nearby, but I couldn't see much by then because of the condensation in my helmet. I was also starting to worry about how much oxygen I had left. I ran my hand over the panel until I came to the edge of it. There was a double row of rivets there, just wide enough to squeeze my fingers between. That should hold me for a second. I brought my other hand over and squeezed that in too. Then I reached out to find the next panel. Did the same. I was just clinging on by my fingertips the whole time. I was crawling along the outside of something that was moving faster than a train. I tried to find the hatch with my fingers, but suddenly my foot caught on something. It was stuck. I brought the other foot round to it. Yes! 2 feet fitted inside. I ran one foot along the inside rim of whatever it was. Then I froze. The rim seemed quite sharp and metal. What if I ripped the suit? I stayed still for a while, trying not to breathe. I was sure that it was the hatch below me. I I just wasn't sure how to get the rest of myself down there. I tried crawling down with my hand, but kept my feet tucked in. It only took me so far. I was going to have to try to jump down. What if the moment I let go, I just shot into space? I had no choice. I had to risk it. I let go of the side of the rocket, and at the same time, tried to push my legs inside as hard as I could. In my mind, this would make me slide elegantly, feet first, back inside the hatch. In fact, I banged my knees. The pain made me curl up into a little ball. So for a second or two, I was floating completely free in space. But the momentum of curling up made me turn right over, and as I came round, I was passing the bottom of the hatch. I grabbed it and dragged myself inside. There was plenty to hold onto in there. I felt around blindly with my fingers and pressed a button. I couldn't hear the airlock door closing behind me. I still wasn't out of danger, but I was so happy to be back inside I started to take my helmet off. I wasn't sure how to do it and fumbled around for a bit. When I finally got it off, I could see again. And the first thing I saw was the hatch door just clicking shut. If I'd known the proper way of undoing the helmet, I'd have got off more quickly. The door would not have been fully closed and my head might have exploded, although I'd probably have suffocated first. I stood with my forehead against the metal door. It felt so cold and so solid. I loved the way it didn't try to run away from me and leave me in space. It seemed like hours before the door opened. Long, happy hours of just standing still, not gripping anything, not scared, appreciating the various properties of metal doorways. As soon as the hatch opened, all the children were floating there in front of me, bobbing up and down like a bunch of cherubs. And they just looked so alive. I know it sounds mad, but I could see every one of their eyelashes. I wanted to count them. I could hear their breathing. I could hear eyelids opening and closing, everything. It was like I completed a quest, and all the rewards I'd earned, the health, the experience, the strength, were flooding into me. It was like I'd gained a superpower. Super hearing. I could have just stood and listened to them breathing and blinking all day. I wanted to hug them, to be honest, but obviously that would have been too weird. Florida said, "Did you find him?" "Who?" "Hassan, you went outside to look for Hassan." "No, he's not out there." I was so happy that I'd rescued myself, I'd forgotten about rescuing Hassan. "What is out there?" "Well, you know, the universe and stuff." "If he's not out there, and he's not in here, where is he? He can't have just vanished," said Florida. Max said, "First the earth vanished, and now Hassan has vanished. Everything he keeps vanishing. Maybe we are going to vanish." I said, "Shh." Among all the new sounds I could hear, eyelids opening and closing, muscles and bones moving, electric equipment buzzing, a counter from the travel Monopoly set hovering under the seats. I'd noticed another sound, louder and rougher, coming from inside the wall, near the driving compartment. I floated over to it. To me it sounded deafening, but I knew that the others couldn't hear it at all, because when I was looking for Hassan earlier, I hadn't heard it either. It was my new super hearing that picked it up. I felt around on the wall for a bit and found a gap between the panels. I pushed on one panel and tugged on the other, and there was Hassan, snoring. He woke up, looking so pleased with himself. He said, "Did I win? When the soldiers came to my village, I hid in a space behind the water tank for 3 days. I've had plenty of practice at hide and seek." I said, "Of course, I forgot about that." It was strange to think this might be only the second most dangerous game of hide and seek Hassan had ever played. "So I won?" "Yes, you won. You did really well." "So," said Max, "he won. Finally, I am a loser." I looked at him. With all my super hearing, I could almost hear his heart beating faster than usual. Then it seemed to calm down. "You know," he said, "it does not feel so bad." Florida shoved him and he floated backwards all the way to the other side of the minibus. He laughed all the way. Watching him made me feel good. I knew that the green button was finally safe from him. I said, "Let's measure you all on the height chart. See if you've grown." Florida looked at me like I'd gone mad. "You're only gone 10 minutes. How would we have grown?" Space, isn't it?" Like Samson 2 has said, "Less gravity on your spine." They all lined up, and I marked off new heights on the door, just like Mum used to do with me at home. Samson too said, The power of suggestion is amazing. We've all grown an inch or so, just like we would have done if we really were in space. We are really in space, said Max. Mr. Digby went outside, remember? Yes, said Samson too. He went outside, read a newspaper, and then came back inside. I was tempted to say, OK then, if you don't believe me, you go out there. But I took a deep breath and said, OK. But you know, say it's only a simulation. We'll still need to know the proper altitude and the proper angle of departure to get the speed we need from our return trajectory. Can you work stuff out like that? Maybe. He rummaged in his pip and pulled out a book. A really old, thick book called A Boy's Wonder Treasury of Science. My mother gave this to me for my birthday one time, he said, when I was very small. It was her favourite book when she was small. Her mother had given it to her. It's old. I was ill for a while and had to stay off school. I sat in bed and read this book, and it made me very clever. I could feel it. It was like a magic power. It was a pity, really, because I got so clever they sent me to a special school, and I did not see her much after that. Still, sometimes when I am tired or I do something not so clever, I sleep with it under my pillow, and I can feel it making me clever again. That's how I know about the power of suggestion. At the back of this book, there were these massive lists of numbers, logarithmic tables. That's what they used to do complicated maths before they invented calculators. With this, said Samson too, I can work out the trajectory. I said, well, if you need any help, I'm officially gifted and talented. And when we're ready and the time is right, we will, all of us, press that green button together. They all cheered. Florida suddenly shouted, Look! Out of the window we could see a huge shadow moving across the moon like a carpet being rolled out. What is it? I knew what it was right away. I recognised it. I said, That's the shadow of the Earth. And we all watched it. It was the nearest any of us had come to seeing the Earth since we blew off course. It was the first time since then that we'd known for sure that the Earth was still there. Except for Samson too, obviously, who thought he was still in China. The shadow scythed over the moon's surface, and I tried to imagine what bits of the Earth we were looking at. Then I said, Who's hungry? And we raided the supplies of space food. While we were all laying into pork that makes you eat your own hand, Florida suddenly burst out laughing and pointed at Max. What? Said Max. Look, he's talking to us. He's eating and he's weeing at the same time. You can see his waste bag pulsing. Max, are you weeing while you're eating? Yes, I am. So am I, said Hassan. And soon everyone was, except me. I didn't think it was deadly. I just stood and tutted a bit. I think that made it even more enjoyable for them. Hassan laughed so much he floated right up to the ceiling. Then Max did the same, and Florida, and finally even Samson too. They looked like some kind of giggly mobile, circling hilariously all over the ceiling. It must have been just after that we slipped into the shadow and moved over the darkened surface of the moon. Wow, that was a long chapter. We've got about 50 pages left. I wonder if they're going to make it back to the Earth safely. I have to find out soon.